I just loved the campus, I loved the people, and I pretty much knew right away that that was where I wanted to go to school. I was young in my faith. I'd just become a believer, and I'm thinking, this may actually help me with my faith. So I enrolled at Huntington in 1975. I was challenged. Steve Denny and I were the only two non-ministerial students on our floor. I was challenged spiritually. I was challenged in leadership.
I met Brian in my first class as a freshman at Huntington University. It was honors writing with Miss Patton. As a sophomore and junior, I then roomed next to him and Ted Doolittle. They both became lifelong friends. We shared a lot of late night conversations and ate a lot of stale popcorn. I think all of us knew that Brian Hughes would be a very successful businessman. There's no surprises there. He just had it written all through him.
Being in student government and eventually being the student body president, we're at 120 students working as volunteers in our government, in committees, the Student Senate itself, homecoming, fundraisers, resolution committee, elections committee, all those. I think we had 17 committees. I learned very quickly that the only way to hold that group together was to have a compelling vision, to set the example, to exercise influence in a positive way. There were times, I hate to admit this because I worked hard to be a good student, but there were times we kind of had the philosophy, don't let books interfere with your education. And what we meant by that was we were learning so much just from our involvement in activities and in student government that it was as valuable as anything we learned in the classroom. So I grew a lot in my faith. I got involved in a local church. I led singing, believe it or not. Toured with the choir. Toured with the wind ensemble. Was in pep band. Even wrote for the newspaper one year. I look back on that, my business courses, all of that involvement, and it really shaped me spiritually. It shaped me as a leader. It changed my life completely. It's my senior year, and I'm thinking about the future. And it was tough to find jobs in 1979. Recession had hit, double-digit inflation. So I painted houses for a while, and then eventually got a job as a staff accountant, junior staff accountant at a CPA firm. I learned a lot. Those were 2 years of boot camp for me. I did 60 audits and tax returns and you name it, and I stayed connected with Huntington. One of my clients, Hayes Travel, the largest travel agency in the state of Ohio, needed somebody young to manage their accounting department. I did that job for 15 years, and I was eventually promoted to vice president of finance. I was the youngest senior team member there, and then eventually executive vice president. Gary Moritz at Sun Federal attended one of our services at our church. He called me and said, we're about to do 2 merger partnerships with 2 other credit unions, and we're going to go from $70 million to $100 million overnight in assets, and I think it's time for us to get a chief financial officer. Would you be interested in applying? So I started out as the chief financial officer, eventually vice president of finance.
There was something different about Brian in the fact that he could take our mission and values and put the financial strategies together without losing our purpose and values. Brian was able to work side by side with the leadership team here to keep us grounded in mission, values, and culture, but also then to help us articulate our ultimate vision of where we wanted Sun Federal to be. He stepped up to the, I believe, the higher calling of CEO, and our transition was very smooth, and it was a godsend.
Our mission is based on unconditional love, loving our members, and we're a cooperative, so we are owned by the members. We have no stockholders. Doing the right thing by someone in their financial life, whether they're lovable or not. We're a family, and we find joy in the workplace.
I think Brian has a history of fostering, developing of friendships that are of significance, the kind of friendships and relationships that do last for a long time, even though they change over time. Myself, I was a teenage kid that he mentored initially, and then that changed over the years as then I became alongside of him and was an assistant to him in a Bible study. And then our friendship just continued to grow. And then I end up becoming his pastor a number of years later. When you know Brian, there's this air of humility underneath him that is just so real and so genuine.
Meanwhile, I meet Karen, my wife. She was a senior in high school when I started the youth group. And so she was actually one of my youth group students. And years later, we met in a singles group. And so in 1990, we got married, had 4 children, all boys. We built 2 houses together and raised those boys. She immersed herself in those children. She had a wonderful career as an accountant, as a controller, and she gave that up to raise those boys.
Growing up with my dad, he was always the person in the household who would be there for us at sporting events and offer those encouraging words. When I was going into college, my father told me that if I learned more than 50% of what I was going to learn there within the classroom, that I was doing everything wrong. That was a lesson that he learned while he attended Huntington University. And I found that to be very true.
At Huntington, involvement, changing spiritually, learning leadership, those opportunities are presented to you. They are out, they're the low-hanging fruit. You can just reach out and sky's the limit. It's easy to do. It's really just a personal decision.